Hi, I'm Melina. I'm back again with another book video, so let's get into it. So today I'm going to go over my most highly recommended books of 2020. So this list of books that I'm going to go over are not books that were necessarily published in 2020, but more so books that I had read throughout this year, or last year actually, and I really enjoyed them, so I really hope you read them, or check them out at least. So let's get into it. So the first book on my list is the DaVinci Code. This is like an all-time bestseller from like years ago, and even though I've had this in my collection for a really long time, I didn't read it until January of last year. So for those of you who don't know, the book follows Robert Langdon, who is the main character in the entire series. There's, I think, 5 books at the moment out. And he is a professor at Harvard. This is the second book in the series, just so you know. And so he is a symbologist at Harvard, and for whatever reason always tends to get roped up into these random adventures, basically, where his expertise is needed. Sometimes he is called to the location because the people have heard of him already from past adventures, or he just stumbles upon it. It depends on the series of the book. Every book takes place in a different location, but this one takes place in France because it has to deal with the Mona Lisa. Like I said, most people have already watched this movie, but the book is very well done. I understand why it was made into a movie, and it really gets you thinking, so I really enjoyed it. And this year I'm actually starting the third one, which is called The Lost Point. So hopefully it will be another favorite to add to the list. So the next book I'm going to talk about is called Nothing Left to Burn. It's a book I actually wanted a giveaway from a blogger. Her name's Maureen. She's from France. I will link her blog somewhere. And it was one of her most recommended books to me. And I didn't know if I was going to love it, but like we tend to have similar taste in books, so I was really excited. And then I won the giveaway, so I was super excited because I could choose any book I wanted. I ended up choosing that one in a hardcover, and I was super excited to get in the mail. And it was probably one of the first books, again, I read in 2020, probably right after the DaVinci Code. It was so good. The only reason I don't have it in my hands is because I lent it to one of my friends actually at the moment. I dropped it off at her house for her to read it because it's so good. It has a lot of themes. It's definitely a young adult literature book. It's not like the DaVinci Code, which I definitely would say is more of an adult fiction. This book has to do with California fire. It has to do with California fires, and a teenager, she's in high school, and she breaks down basically a relationship from a few weeks, months before the fire, and what leads up to how their relationship was like when the fire is actually happening. And I feel like from the beginning you kind of have an idea as to why mention of like why the fire was the breaking point, and it really is just so well written. I feel like the way that the story is told, the way that there's so many stresses happening, it's just really like so good. You want to read every page. I think I read the book probably in one day. I had to read it. I had to finish it. If I didn't read it in one day, I definitely read it in 2. As someone who reads so many books, I feel like this book was just so good, and it really stood out. The style of writing, the storytelling. I had never read a story that had to deal with fires to this extent, because this is like the California fires. It's not necessarily like, oh, my house burned down. It's just, I don't want to give away too much, but it's really good, and I highly recommend it. I will have the book right here somewhere at some point while I was saying all of this. So during the quarantine, the pandemic, I had started a book club with some of my friends. It was not super serious. I didn't know what kind of genre we were going to read. I originally had thought of it because I love reading. To be honest, I didn't even keep up with it. It was so difficult for me to keep a schedule to have to read a book, especially if it wasn't my type of book. But early on in the book club, my friend Melissa, she recommended the book Dear Edward for us to read. I was not sure if I was going to like it because of like it's regular fiction. It was during a very heavy period of the quarantine and pandemic, but I was so wrong. The book is so good. So this follows a plane crash. You know this right from the beginning. You read the summary that when this plane crash happens, there's only one survivor, and it's a young boy, and his name's Edward. And the story isn't told necessarily only from the perspective of following Edward's life. It's told in between two instances. The instance of people getting on the plane, being on the plane, and what happens to Edward after the fact as he grows up. So this follows Edward for a long time, probably until he's like 18 years old or something, and he was around, don't quote me, but I think he was like between 9 and like 12 when the plane crash happened. So it follows him for many years throughout the series, throughout the novel. And then while they're on the plane, it doesn't necessarily just follow him. It has multiple perspectives. So you meet multiple passengers on this plane. And you really understand who these people are within the few chapters that they do have of them. Because it's not just one person on the plane. You get to know at least 8 characters. And they're all so well thought out. They really have so many unique qualities and traits that you could remember immediately each person that they're mentioning, their hopes, their dreams, what they had gone through before getting on that plane. And it's really incredible for an author to be able to put so many characters and give each of them so much life. It is an amazing book. I highly recommend it, and I think it might be my favorite book of 2020. During the immense time of the Black Lives Matter movement, I wanted to read something really educational. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to absorb all of the information that I had to learn. I mean, there's still so much I still have to learn. One of my favorites of 2020 is why I'm no longer talking to white people about race. It's right over here. I actually listened to this in an audiobook. It was my first audiobook, and it really changed my mind about audiobooks. I don't think I'm an audiobook person when it comes to listening to like a fiction novel, but I feel like when it came to listening to something that has to do with like an educational bit, I feel like I could just absorb the information better. I really enjoyed it. The author talking about her experiences with race as a Black woman in the UK, speaking about the history of slavery and racism in the UK, and racism even in present time with pop culture and everything. It was a really good book. I definitely highly recommend it. And the audiobook format was amazing as well. So if you don't want to read it and you want to just give it a listen, I highly recommend it. So the last book I'm going to talk about is called Save the Date. Again, this is another book that I had lent to my friend, but it's really good, and I think it was probably one of my best fluffier reads. It definitely reminded me a lot of like old Sarah Dessen, like Sarah Dessen 2009, 10, maybe even 11, like when I was in high school, because I feel like Sarah Dessen has fallen off as one of my favorites, but initially she was one of my favorites. And this book, the plot line, the characters, they really just reminded me of her. So this story follows Charlie after his sister is getting married in town. A lot of the family members have not seen each other, like a lot of her siblings have not seen each other for such a long time that this was going to be an important moment for Charlie. She's missed her siblings more than anything in the world, and they're all across the country. And she expected this weekend to be perfect, that after so long of not seeing each other, she just wanted to spend lots of time with her family, her favorite brother, and just enjoy the weekend. She did everything in her ability to make it as perfect as possible. And of course, it ends up being the complete opposite of that, from the alarm clock, from the house alarm going off every 5 seconds, to a random dog that is barking all the time, to suits going missing. Anything you could think of that could go wrong did go wrong that weekend. And it was really hard for Charlie because I feel like she was really scared for what the future held for her, and so the last thing on her mind was to worry about what the future held and just make this weekend as perfect as possible. And yeah, it could have everything you could ever want in a book. It had family conflict, sibling conflict. It was sibling, parents, conflict with everyone in the family, but at the same time, the family love, the support for one another is so beautiful. Though there's a little sprinkle of romance in there, a little bit of like that self-discovery aspect because she is a high school girl going into college soon. And it was just really good. It was well written, it was funny, it was relatable in a way that if you get to know the characters, you would realize that there's some aspects of their life that you could never relate to, but it was still so good. I had never read another book by this author, at least I don't think so. But after reading that book, I remember searching everywhere for all of her extra books because I had never read anything. And I read, I think, 2 more books after I read this one. and I've loved every single one. This was definitely my favorite out of all of them that I've read. She's so talented and highly recommend. So these are the 5 books that I actually recommend in 2020. I thought my list was going to be a lot longer because I ended up reading over 80 books throughout 2020, which I'm really proud of, but also amazed that I actually could read that many books in a year without it actually like interfering with my life, even though we didn't really have a life in 2020, right? Like I said, let me know what your top books were in 2020, any books you recommend that I read, and if there's any video recommendations you want to see from me next, just let me know. As always, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, subscribe right now. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye.